Good evening, listeners. My name is EveningWhisperTales. Tonight, I'll be telling you some scary horror stories to help you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Now, let's begin our evening together. Story 1. The Missing Call Logs. I'm a police officer in a mid-sized city in the US. I've been on the job long enough to not get rattled by much. People lie, families fight, someone disappears for a weekend and comes back like nothing happened. You learn to stop taking everything personal. This one still gets under my skin, mostly because it started so normal, and then turned into something I can't put in a report without sounding insane. It was late spring last year. I was working evenings, doing the usual mix of calls and paperwork. Around 8:40 p.m. dispatch sent me to a welfare check on a teenager who hadn't come home from school. The mom's name was Sarah Griffin. She sounded exhausted on the phone with dispatch, not hysterical. More like she'd been trying to stay calm for hours and it was finally cracking. She lived in a decent neighborhood. Not rich, but not rough either. Clean lawns, kids' bikes on driveways, couples walking dogs. When I pulled up, her porch light was on even though it wasn't fully dark yet. She opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "My daughter's name is Emma," she said right away, like she'd been practicing. "She's 15. She got out of school at 3. She's not answering her phone. This isn't like her." Inside, the house looked lived in, but tidy. Shoes by the door. A backpack on the floor like someone dropped it and forgot. The TV was on low, but nobody was watching it. I asked for a recent photo and basic info. Sarah handed me her phone, already on a picture of Emma at some school thing. Brown hair, braces, that half-smile kids do when they're sick of adults taking photos. "Any friends she'd go to?" I asked. Sarah nodded and rattled off names. No drama, no suspicious boyfriend story, no blow-up fight. Emma had chores, a curfew, and a pretty normal life from what I could tell. Her stepdad, Mike, was in the kitchen pretending to be calm, doing dishes that were already clean. He kept glancing toward the hallway like he expected Emma to come walking out any second. "We called her," he said, "a bunch." "Let me see the call log," I said, mostly out of habit. Sarah handed me her phone again. I scrolled. There were a lot of calls to Emma's contact, like 15 in a row, all marked no answer. Then a couple texts. "Where are you? Call me now." "I'm worried, Em. Normal." I asked for Emma's phone number so I could have dispatch ping it if needed. Sarah read it off. Dispatch tried. Phone went to voicemail. At that point, it was still a missing juvenile. Possibly runaway, but not obvious. Not yet elevated. I told them we'd start with friends, check the school, check the route home. I got the basics into the system. I left and drove to Emma's school. It was closed, lights off, but the parking lot still had a few cars. I met the custodian and asked if anyone saw Emma hang around after school. Big Stitz shrugged, said kids come and go, he didn't pay attention. I ran her name through our local contacts. No prior calls at the home. No known issues. By 10 p.m., Sarah was calling again. She said Emma's location services were still showing home, which didn't make sense because Emma's phone clearly wasn't home, and nobody had found it. I didn't think much of it. Location glitches happen. Apps lie. Teen phones die. I told her we'd keep checking. Then Sarah said something that made me pause. "I can hear her," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Her voice," she said, like she was embarrassed. I don't know. I can hear her phone sometimes." I pictured a mom who hadn't slept all day, hearing things. Like a voicemail? No, she said quickly. It's like she's calling me, but she isn't. It rings, but when I answer, it's just her breathing. And then, she says my name. I stopped walking and stood by my cruiser. Your phone rings and it shows Emma calling. Yes, Sarah said, and then it stops, and then it does it again. Right now? I asked. It happened 20 minutes ago. I told her to screen record it if it happened again. I didn't say that sounds impossible, because you don't say that to a parent whose kid is missing. You just collect info. I headed back to the station and pulled up Emma's phone records through what we can access on short notice. We can't just look at anything whenever we want, but in a missing juvenile situation, we can request the basics fast. The first weird thing, the carrier showed calls coming in and out, but the timestamps didn't match Sarah's call log. Sarah's phone showed she called Emma at 8:12, 8:14, 8:15, 8:16. The carrier record on Emma's phone had those calls, but it said they happened at 7:12, 7:14, 7:15, 7:16, exactly 1 hour earlier. I double-checked time zones, same city, same carrier. No. Reason. Sometimes carriers log times differently depending on system sync, but it was consistent, like everything on Emma's phone was 1 hour behind. I flagged it, but at that point it felt like a technical issue. Not my biggest concern. We checked a couple of friends' houses. Nobody had seen her. One friend said Emma left school like normal, got in the pickup lane, then walked away like she was going to meet someone. That was the first real lead. We put out a bolo for the kid in the phone. Around midnight, I got a call from Mike, the stepdad. He sounded pissed, not at me, but at the situation. "She's calling us again," he said. "Emma?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "and it's messed up." I drove back out. When I got there, Sarah was sitting on the couch with her phone in both hands like she was scared to drop it. Mike was standing behind her, arms crossed. "She called at 11:47, Sarah said. "Look." Her phone showed an incoming call from Emma at 11:47 p.m. She tapped it and showed me she'd answered. The call duration said 0:12, 12 seconds. I asked her to call Emma back right now. Sarah did. It went to voicemail. Then her phone rang again. I felt my stomach tighten because I watched it happen in real time. Screen lit up. Incoming call, Emma. Sarah froze and looked at me like she needed permission. I nodded. She answered, put it on speaker. At first, there was nothing. Not static, not wind. Just that weird dead quiet you get sometimes on bad connections. Then I heard breathing. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just there, like someone had the phone near their mouth but wasn't speaking. Sarah whispered, "Emma, baby." The breathing stopped for a second, and then a voice said, "Mom." It sounded like a teenage girl. It did sound like the kid in the photo, but I'd never met her, so I can't swear to it. It was close enough that Sarah's face changed instantly. She covered her mouth with her free hand. "Emma, where are you?" Sarah said, and her voice broke. The voice didn't answer. There was a faint sound behind it, like a low hum, almost like the inside of a running car or an air vent, something steady. Then the voice said, "I'm home." Sarah looked around the living room like Emma might be standing in the corner. "No, you're not," she said. "I'm right here. Where are you?" The voice didn't say anything for a second. Then, really softly, it said, "Don't open the door." Mike stepped forward. "Emma, what door?" he snapped. There was a click and the call ended. We stared at the phone like it was a snake. Sarah started crying, quiet and shaking like she'd been holding it in all day. Mike looked at me and said, "What the hell is that?" I wanted to say it was a prank, someone spoofing a number. That's the easy answer. But Sarah's phone didn't show a number. It showed the actual saved contact. And we'd already tried calling back and it went to voicemail. I asked if they had a landline. They didn't. I asked if Emma had a tablet logged into iMessage. Sarah said no, it's just the phone. I asked for Emma's phone again, her actual device, in case it was somehow at home. Mike went to Emma's room and came back holding her bed pillow like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He said the phone wasn't there. The room looked like she left it that morning. Makeup on the dresser, a hoodie on the chair, charger cord plugged into the wall with no phone on it. I asked Sarah to show me the voicemail greeting when she called Emma. She dialed, put it on speaker. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. But it wasn't Emma's normal greeting, it was Sarah's voice. It said, "Hey, it's Sarah, leave a message." Sarah's face went blank. "That's not..." she started. Mike grabbed the phone and dialed again like he didn't believe it. Same thing. Sarah's voice. I asked Sarah if she'd ever recorded that kind of greeting. She said no. She had a voicemail greeting of her own on her own phone, sure, but it wasn't that exact wording. She said her own greeting says, "Hi, you reached Sarah Griffin, leave a message." The one on Emma's phone just said, "Hey, it's Sarah, leave a message." It sounds small, but it was close enough to be creepy. I told them not to touch anything else and asked if I could take photos of their phones for documentation. Mike looked like he wanted to throw his phone across the room, but he agreed. I stepped outside and called dispatch to try pinging again. Still no location. Just last known near their home tower, which could mean nothing. The carrier rep told me something else odd. Emma's phone was showing as active on the network, but the device wasn't sending any GPS data, like it was online, but not really. I stood on their porch and stared at their front door, thinking about what the voice said. "Don't open the door." The door was right there. Normal wood door, deadbolt, chain lock, nothing special. I walked back inside. Sarah was sitting very still now, like she'd gone numb. "Has anyone come by tonight?" I asked. "Any neighbors?" Mike said no. Why would they? I asked about Emma's social media. Sarah handed me her laptop and logged into Emma's accounts because she had the passwords. Parents do that more than teenagers think. Nothing unusual. No new posts. No messages since earlier that afternoon. Mostly just friend drama about homework. Then my own phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, "Officer Reynolds." Breathing. My blood went cold because it sounded like the same kind of breathing. Close to the mic. Steady. "Hello," I said, and I hated how my voice sounded. Too alert. A girl's voice said, "Are you at my house?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at Sarah and Mike. They weren't watching me. Yet. "Who is this?" I asked. The voice said, "Don't let them open it." "Open what?" I asked. There was a pause. The hum sound started again, low and constant, like a distant appliance. Then the voice said, "The door. The other door." And the call ended. I stared at my phone screen. The number was blocked after it disconnected, like those weird system calls where it just says unknown. Sarah saw my face. "What?" she said. "What happened?" I told them, honestly. I just got a call too. Mike's eyes went hard. "From Emma?" "I don't know," I said. "It sounded like a girl." Sarah stood up fast. "It was her, wasn't it?" I can't say that, I said, but my gut didn't like how quickly she accepted it either way. I asked Mike if there were any other doors in the house besides the front and back. He pointed down the hallway. Garage door, basement door, back slider. I told them not to open anything for now. I know how that sounds. I know you can't tell homeowners not to open their own doors. But the words came out before I could filter them. Mike gave me this look like I was either insane or incompetent. Officer, are you serious? I didn't have a good explanation, so I went with the practical one. If someone is messing with you, if they're watching the house, I don't want anyone stepping outside alone or opening something and giving them a chance. That got through to him a little. He nodded stiffly. I did a quick walkthrough with Mike right behind me. Nothing looked disturbed, no windows open, no footprints on the back patio. The basement door was shut, locked. The garage door was shut. Mike said, "We don't even use the basement, it's just storage." "Any entry from outside to the basement?" I asked. He said no, only from inside. I asked where the basement door was. He pointed to a plain door in the kitchen area, kind of tucked behind the pantry. I hadn't noticed it earlier. We stood in front of it. It had one of those old brass knob locks and a deadbolt above it. Mike said it's always locked because of the stairs. I leaned close, put my hand near the crack under the door. I expected maybe a draft, maybe that basement smell. Instead, I felt warm air, like someone had a heater running down there. "That's weird," Mike said, and I realized he felt it too. "Is there a furnace down there?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "but it's not that warm. We keep it normal." I pressed my ear near the door. I heard something, not footsteps, not voices, just that low hum again, like a fan. Sarah came up behind us. "What are you doing?" she asked. I told her, "Just checking." Then her phone rang again. Incoming call, Emma. Sarah answered without looking at me this time, put it on speaker again. She was crying before the call even connected. "Emma," she said. "Emma, baby, please." Breathing again. Closer this time, like whoever it was had moved the phone right to their mouth. Then Emma's voice, if it was her, said, "Mom, I'm downstairs." Sarah's eyes snapped to the basement door. Mike reached for the deadbolt automatically, like instinct. I grabbed his wrist, not hard, but firm. "Don't," I said. Mike yanked his arm away. "If that's my kid down there." The voice on the phone cut in, sharper now. "No, don't open it." Sarah's face was wet and shiny under the kitchen light. "Emma, why?" she begged. The voice said, "Because it's not the right downstairs." I felt my skin prickle. "What does that mean?" I said without thinking, like I was talking to a witness. The voice paused, and for a split second I thought I heard another sound behind it, like distant talking, muffled, like a TV in another room. But it didn't match the house we were standing in. Then the voice said, "I didn't go there." Mike snapped, "Where are you then?" The voice said, "I'm home." Then, quietly, like a whisper, "But you're not." And the call ended again. Nobody spoke for a full 10 seconds. It felt longer. Sarah sat down at the kitchen table like her legs gave up. Mike stood there with both hands clenched. I backed up a step and looked around their kitchen, trying to force my brain to latch onto something normal. A bowl of fruit, a school calendar on the fridge, a stack of mail, regular life. Then I noticed something that I swear I hadn't seen earlier. On the fridge, held up by a magnet, was a sheet of paper. It looked like a printed email. Subject line in bold at the top. Weekly basement service reminder. I pointed at it. "What's that?" Mike looked. "Huh." Sarah wiped her cheeks and leaned forward. "We don't have basement service," she said. Mike pulled the paper off the fridge. He squinted. "This isn't ours." It had their address on it. It had Mike's name. It even had his phone number at the bottom. But the company name wasn't one I'd heard of, and the email address looked wrong, like a bunch of letters that almost made sense. Mike said, "How did this get here?" Sarah said, "I didn't print anything." I asked if anyone had been in their house that day. Deliveries, repairs, anything. Mike said no. Sarah said she'd been home since noon, working remote. Nobody came in. I asked to see the back door camera footage if they had any. Mike said they had a basic doorbell camera on the front. We pulled it up on his phone. It showed the neighborhood normal. Cars passing, a kid on a scooter, a couple walking a dog. At 6:12 p.m., someone walked up to their porch. It was hard to describe. Not a clear face, like the camera couldn't focus. The person was wearing a hoodie with the hood up, head down. They set something by the door, like a package. Then they looked directly into the camera, and the feed glitched for exactly 1 second. Just a jump, not a full cutout, like a skipped frame. When it came back, the porch was empty. No person, no package. Mike replayed it 3 times. "That's not possible," he said. Sarah said, "That's when Emma called," like she was connecting dots that maybe weren't real. I checked the timestamp, 6:12 p.m. Sarah said Emma's first weird call was around 11:47 p.m., but earlier she mentioned location services acting weird in the evening too. Everything was starting to blur. I asked Mike if he could rewind farther, see if anyone else came up. There were no other visitors. Then I asked something I didn't expect to ask that night. "Do you have any doors that don't go anywhere?" I said. Mike stared at me. "What?" I said. "Old houses sometimes have sealed doors. Renovations, weird stuff." Sarah shook her head, irritated. "No, it's a normal house." Mike said, "Basement door, garage door, closets." "Closets?" I repeated. We checked Emma's closet. Normal. Clothes, shoes, a couple storage bins. No crawl space. We checked the hallway closet. Normal. Then Mike opened the pantry door in the kitchen and froze. The pantry was shallow, just shelves, but at the back of it, behind the bottom shelf, there was a thin line like a seam in the wall, like paneling. Mike ran his hand along it. "This wasn't here," he said. Sarah stood up again, tense. "What are you talking about?" Mike pressed on the panel and it gave slightly, like it was hinged or loose. I stepped forward, heart thumping for no reason that made sense. It looked like a hidden door you'd see in a weird house tour video. But this wasn't that. This was a normal suburban kitchen. "Don't open it," Sarah said, and for the first time her voice wasn't just fear. It was like she believed the phone voice. Mike's jaw flexed. "We're opening it," he said. I said, "Hold on, let me..." But he grabbed the bottom shelf, lifted it up off the pegs like he'd done it before, and pulled the panel. It swung inward. Warm air rolled out, smelling like dust and something metallic, like old pennies. And underneath that, faintly, that same low hum. Inside was a narrow space like a maintenance corridor, not wide enough for 2 people. There were unfinished studs and insulation. At the end of it, maybe 10 feet back, was another door, a plant interior door. Sarah made a sound like she swallowed a scream. Mike took a step toward it. I put myself in front of him this time. "Mike, stop!" He shoved past me, not violent, but determined. "That's my kid," he said through his teeth. He reached for the doorknob, and from inside the corridor, Emma's voice said clear as day, not from a phone this time. "Don't!" It came from beyond that second door. I backed up without meaning to. My entire body reacted like a threat was in the room. Mike froze with his hand on the knob. Sarah whispered, "Emma." There was silence. Then, from somewhere else in the house, somewhere behind us, Sarah's phone started ringing again. Incoming call. "Emma." At the exact same time that Emma's voice had just come from the corridor. Sarah looked down at her phone, then up at me, and I could see it in her face. She realized what I realized. Whatever was calling her, whatever was talking, it didn't make sense as one person in one place. Mike looked over his shoulder at the kitchen like he expected to see Emma standing there, but the kitchen was empty. He turned back to the corridor door and tightened his grip on the knob. I said, "Mike, listen to me. We need backup. We need..." The door in the corridor rattled once like someone on the other side tried it. Then the hum got louder, not like a machine winding up, more like it was getting closer. And Emma's voice, again from behind that door, said something that made my stomach drop. "I can hear you breathing." Story 2. The night shift cameras never reset. I work night security at a distribution warehouse outside a small city in Ohio. It's the kind of job where most nights nothing happens, and that's the whole point. Trucks come in, trucks leave, and I sit in a room full of monitors, making sure nobody steals pallets of paper towels. I've been there about 2 years. Same shift every week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Same routine. I unlock the office, make coffee, check the cameras, walk the building at midnight, 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. After a while, you memorize every shadow and reflection. That's why I noticed when something stopped matching. The building is huge, basically one giant rectangle with loading docks on one side and employee parking on the other. Inside, it's long aisles of shelves taller than houses. During the day, there are forklifts everywhere, but at night it's just me and the hum of refrigeration units. The camera system resets timestamps every night at exactly 3 a.m. It's automatic. The IT guy explained it once when they upgraded the software. You'll see a tiny flicker on every monitor, and then the time ticks over perfectly synced. I only knew this because the flicker always happened during my second coffee. One night around late September, I was sitting at the desk and the flicker didn't happen. I noticed right away because I was literally staring at the screens waiting for it. 2:59:58, 2:59:59. Then it turned 3000 with no flicker. I remember saying out loud, "Huh?" to nobody. I didn't think creepy. I thought broken system. I made a note to tell the day supervisor. But about 5 minutes later, I looked at camera 12, the far back loading bay, and saw someone walk across it. That wasn't unusual by itself. Sometimes early drivers show up, but the truck bays were all closed and the exterior cameras showed no vehicles pulling in. I checked 3 angles, empty lot. I zoomed in. The figure was far away, just a silhouette between shelves, no reflective vest, which everyone has to wear. I grabbed my flashlight and did a walkthrough. The building smelled normal. Cold concrete and cardboard. No voices, no movement, nothing. Back in the office, camera 12 was empty again. I rewound the footage. Here's where it started bothering me. The timestamp said 2:14 a.m. I knew that was wrong because I'd watched it happen at around 3:05. The system clock at the top of the screen still said 3:10 a.m. But the playback timer insisted the person walked through nearly an hour earlier. I checked another camera recording, camera 4 at the employee entrance, and that one showed the correct time. So one camera thought it was earlier than reality. I figured the camera lost sync. Old buildings, old wiring, whatever. I logged it and moved on. The next night it happened again. 3 a.m. came, no flicker. At 3:07, camera 12 showed movement again. Same aisle, same walking speed. I didn't even leave the chair this time. I just watched. The person crossed from left to right and disappeared behind shelving that led nowhere but a dead-end pallet stack. I switched to the adjacent camera before they should have appeared. Nothing, no exit, no continuation. They just stopped existing between cameras. I rewound. Timestamp 2:14 a.m. again. Exactly the same minute as the night before. Same walking pace too. I overlaid the clips side by side and my stomach tightened because the movements matched perfectly. Not similar, identical, like the same recording played twice. I checked storage logs. The system wasn't looping video. It showed 2 separate files. That's when I finally called my supervisor, Mark. He was annoyed because it was after midnight. I told him I thought the system was duplicating footage. He remote logged in and said everything looked fine. He said maybe a driver had wandered in earlier and I just didn't notice until playback. But I had been there the whole shift both nights. Before hanging up, he joked, "As long as it's not a ghost, don't wake me again." I laughed at the time. I didn't laugh the third night. At 3 a.m., the monitors flickered again for the first time in 2 days. Everything reset normally. I remember actually feeling relieved. Then at 3:12 a.m., camera 12 showed the person again. Different time. Same person. I stared so long my eyes watered. Same height, same outline, same arm swing. They walked the same exact path, but now the playback timestamp said 3:12 a.m. Correct time. So I grabbed my keys and walked out there while watching on the tablet feed. I turned into the aisle exactly when the person should have been halfway down. Nobody, but the camera still showed them walking toward me. I looked at the screen, looked at the empty aisle, back to the screen. They kept coming. I actually stepped aside because my brain reacted like I'd collide with them. On the monitor, the figure passed directly in front of where I was standing. In real life, cold air hit my arm, like someone brushed past me. I spun around, nothing there. My heart was hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. I told myself it was airflow from the cooling vents. I walked back to the office faster than I want to admit. On camera, the person reached the dead end and stopped. Then they turned their head toward the camera for the first time. I couldn't see a face, just a darker oval where a face should be. And the video froze for half a second. When it resumed, the aisle was empty. I checked the timestamp, 2:14 a.m. Even though the system clock said 3:18, I didn't sleep after that shift. The next night, I brought my phone tripod and set it facing the monitors. I wanted proof in case the system logs lied again. At exactly 3 a.m., the screens flickered, then flickered again, then again. They kept resetting every few seconds like the system couldn't hold the correct time. Each time the clock jumped, 2:58 to 3:00 to 2:59 to 3:00 to 2:14 to 3:00. And every time it hit 2:14, camera 12 showed the person walking, not recorded, live. I could tell because the red live indicator stayed on. I whispered, "Okay, not funny," to an empty room. Then the radio on my desk crackled. Nobody uses the radio at night except me. But voice came through, my voice, slightly out of breath. It said, "Don't go to the back aisle." I froze. The radio clicked off. I didn't remember saying that. I checked the phone recording after, and it captured the monitors glitching. But the radio audio wasn't on the video at all, like it only existed in the room. At 3:22 a.m. I heard a metal bang from the warehouse floor, not from speakers. Real. I almost didn't check. Every instinct said stay in the office. But policy says investigate noises, so I grabbed the flashlight and went. The sound came from the exact dead-end aisle. Halfway down, I saw a pallet tipped over, boxes scattered. I know for a fact it was stacked properly earlier because I passed it at midnight. No forklifts running, no doors open. I started backing away. Then behind me, I heard footsteps matching mine perfectly. One step after each step I took, I stopped. The steps stopped. I turned around. Nobody there. The radio crackled again. My voice. I didn't leave yet. I ran back to the office and locked the door. On the monitors, camera 12 showed the aisle. And in the office camera feed, camera 1, I saw myself sitting in the chair, but I was standing in the doorway watching it. The version of me on camera leaned forward and spoke into the desk radio. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. I quit 2 days later without finishing my notice. The company called asking why, and I told them the cameras were malfunctioning. They said IT checked. The system never recorded anything at 2:14 a.m. on those dates, but I still have the phone, recording. And every night at exactly 2:14 a.m., my phone automatically plays a notification sound even though there are no alerts. It's the same radio static noise. Story 3. My brother kept coming home. Late. I live in Arizona with my younger brother Daniel. We share a rental house because rent is insane and just made sense after our dad moved out of state. Nothing fancy, just a one-story place in a quiet neighborhood with identical houses on both sides. Daniel works at a tire shop. Early mornings usually. I work remote customer support, so I'm home most of the time. Around November last year, he started coming home late. Not partying late. Not out with friends, just late enough to be weird. Like instead of getting home at 6 p.m. after work, he'd get home at 7:40, then 8:10, then sometimes almost 9. Every night different. At first I didn't care. He's 22, not a kid. But the thing was, he'd always text me first. Always the exact same text. Pulling in now. And I'd hear the driveway gravel maybe 20 seconds later. Headlights through the front window, door unlock, same routine. After about a week, I noticed something off. One night I was in the kitchen when I got the text. I looked at the microwave clock, 7:58 p.m., but I didn't hear the car. I waited, nothing. 30 seconds, still nothing. I walked to the window and the driveway was empty. Then at 8:04, I heard tires outside and headlights came in. Door opened. Daniel walked in like normal. I asked, "Why'd you text before you got here?" He looked confused. I didn't. I texted when I turned onto our street. I showed him my phone. 7:58 p.m. He checked his. 8:04 p.m. Same message, but 6 minutes apart. We figured phone lag or bad signal and moved on. Next night it happened again. Text first, car later, always between 5 and 8 minutes early on my phone. I joked that future Daniel was warning me he was almost home. He didn't laugh. He said his phone had been acting weird too, battery draining faster, apps reopening. Then the third week it got harder to ignore, because one night I got the text at 8:12 p.m. and I heard the car immediately, but it wasn't his car. A dark SUV I'd never seen before rolled slowly past the house and stopped down the street. No one got out. 5 minutes later, Daniel actually arrived. I told him and he just shrugged, but I could tell he was unsettled. After that, we both started paying attention. Every night, text to delay to arrival, except Friday. That night, I got the text at 7:41 p.m., but Daniel walked through the door at 7:41 p.m. Exactly the same moment my phone buzzed. We both froze when we realized. We laughed it off but forced. Then his phone buzzed. Same message from him to me. Pulling in now. Sent at 7:47 p.m., 6 minutes in the future. We stared at each other. Okay, that's not Signal, he said. I checked his sent messages. It really showed 7:47. We waited in silence. At 7:47 p.m. sharp, we heard the driveway gravel. We both looked at the door. Headlights flashed across the living room wall. The handle slowly turned, and then it stopped halfway, like someone tried to open it, but the lock caught. No knock, no footsteps leaving. Daniel opened the door fast, driveway empty, street empty, no headlights anywhere. We didn't sleep much that night. Next morning, Daniel left for work early and everything felt normal again. I almost convinced myself we imagined it until that evening. I got the text at 8:03 p.m. while he was sitting on the couch next to me. We didn't say anything. At 8:09 p.m. we heard the car pull in outside. He whispered, "I'm not going out there." The car engine idled for maybe a full minute, then shut off. Footsteps approached the door, not rushed, casual, like someone who lived there. The handle moved again, slowly. Daniel grabbed a kitchen knife without even thinking. The door unlocked, opened about 3 inches, and stopped, like something on the other side didn't want to fully come in. We both stood there frozen. Then from outside, in Daniel's exact voice, it said, "Dude, why is the chain on?" Daniel looked like he might throw up. He shouted, "Who's there?" No answer. He slammed the door shut and locked everything. We checked the driveway. Empty again. After that, he refused to work late. Started coming home before me sometimes just so the routine couldn't happen. But it didn't matter, because the texts stopped coming only to me. They started coming to him. He woke me up one night around 2 a.m. holding his phone. He showed me a message from himself. "I'm inside. Timestamp 10 minutes in the future." We checked the whole house. Nothing. Then from the hallway, we heard the floor creak once, like a weight shifting where nobody was standing. Daniel whispered, "It's learning the timing." We unplugged the Wi-Fi that night thinking maybe hacked phones or something. Didn't stop, because at exactly 2:10 a.m., the bedroom door handle moved slightly, just once, and his phone buzzed at the same moment. New message, sent from his number. "I made it home." Daniel didn't sleep after that. I didn't either, but he had that wired, shaking energy like his body thought something was still in the house. He kept the hallway light on and sat against the wall facing the bedrooms. Every little house noise made him flinch. The fridge compressor, the air vents ticking, pipes in the walls. Around 3:30 a.m. he said, "If it was just messages, I'd say glitch, but it knows the door." I didn't have an answer for that. At 4:12 a.m., his phone buzzed again. Another text from his number. "No one believes you." Time stamped 4:18 a.m., 6 minutes ahead. Always 6. We waited without talking. At exactly 4:18, something tapped the living room window once. Not loud, just fingernail on glass light. Daniel actually covered his ears like he didn't want to hear more. I forced myself to check. I didn't open the blinds all the way, just enough to peek. Nothing outside. but the reflection in the glass showed the hallway behind me. And for a second, I swear this, I thought I saw someone standing behind Daniel near the bedrooms. I spun around. Nobody. Daniel saw my face and said, "What?" I lied and said nothing. Morning came eventually, and it all felt less real in daylight. Sunlight makes everything stupid seem manageable. We went out for breakfast just to not sit in the house. Here's the part that made it worse. While we were eating, Daniel got a voicemail from himself. Not a butt dial, an actual recorded voicemail. He played it without putting it on speaker first, and his face went pale immediately. He handed me the phone. It was about 5 seconds long. You could hear driving noise, turn signal clicking, and Daniel's voice talking to someone, not the phone. He said, "I'm almost home." Then quieter, like he was talking to a passenger. "He's inside already." The message ended. Timestamp, 2 hours in the future. We stayed out until evening because neither of us wanted to be first back into the house. Eventually, we had to go. Nothing else to do. When we pulled up, everything looked normal. Mail in the box, neighbor's dog barking, same as always. Daniel said, "You go first." I told him absolutely not, so we went together. The inside looked untouched, but the thermostat was set to 68. We keep it at 74 because the unit struggles and freezes up otherwise. Neither of us had changed it. Then we noticed the hallway light was off. We had left it on all morning. Daniel whispered, "We didn't leave it like this." I walked to the kitchen and checked the back door lock. Still locked from inside. Windows locked. No signs of entry. Then his phone buzzed. "Pulling in now." Timestamp, 5 minutes ahead. We were already inside. We stood there waiting. 5 minutes later, headlights washed across the front window. We both moved toward the living room at the same time, but stopped before the door. Car engine idled, car door shut, footsteps on gravel. They sounded exactly like Daniel's boots. Right pace, right rhythm, heel drag on the left foot from an old ankle injury he has. The knob slowly turned. It stopped at the lock, and then a soft knock, 3 taps. Daniel shook his head, tears in his eyes now, whispering, "Don't open it, don't open it." From outside, his voice said calmly, "Why are you home early?" We didn't answer. After about 30 seconds, the footsteps walked away. We watched through the window as absolutely nothing left the driveway. No car, no person, but gravel still crunched, fading away. That night, we pushed the couch against the front door and slept in the same room. At 1:52 a.m., my phone buzzed this time. A little message from Daniel's number, but his phone was in his hand next to me. "I'm in your room." Time-stamped 1:58 a.m. We both stared at the bedroom door. At 1:58, the handle turned slowly downward, stopped against the lock, and we heard breathing on the other side. Not loud, just someone standing there listening to us exist. Daniel said, barely audible, "What do you want?" Silence for maybe 10 seconds, then a quiet reply in his voice. "Just trying to get back to my night." The handle gently returned to its normal position. Footsteps walked down the hallway. We never heard the front door open. In the morning, every single clock in the house was 6 minutes behind our phones. Except the microwave, it was 6 minutes ahead. Story 4. The passenger who never landed. Last year, I started flying a lot for work. Not pilot, just boring corporate training stuff where they ship you around to different branches. I got used to airports fast. Same coffee smell, same announcements, same tired people staring at gates at 6 a.m. I always pick aisle seats because I hate feeling trapped next to the window. On one trip from Denver to Minneapolis, I was seat 18C. I noticed the guy in 18A before we even boarded. He wasn't doing anything creepy, just standing at the window facing the runway while everyone else was on their phones. Late 30s maybe, brown jacket, backpack at his feet. Completely normal, except he didn't move when boarding started. People lined up around him and he stayed there until almost last call. When I walked past him onto the plane, he looked directly at me and said, "This one's delayed." I checked my ticket. On time. I just nodded and kept moving. Inside the plane, I saw him again, already sitting in 18A. No idea how he boarded before me because I was group 3 and he hadn't been in line. I figured I just didn't notice. He didn't acknowledge me when I sat down, just staring forward with the overhead air blowing right into his face. We pushed back exactly on schedule. About 20 minutes after takeoff, I noticed something small. His tray table was down, but he didn't have anything on it. No phone, no drink, just resting his hands on it like he was waiting. Flight attendants came through with drinks. They skipped him, not like accidentally. The attendant looked at him, paused a second, then moved on. I thought maybe he declined earlier or had headphones in, but he wasn't wearing any. I leaned slightly and said, "Hey, you want me to grab one when they come back?" No response. Not ignoring, just no reaction at all. Like he didn't process the question. I figured language barrier or sleeping with eyes open or something and dropped it. An hour later, turbulence hit and everyone had to buckle. He was already buckled but hadn't moved the entire flight, not once. Same posture. That's when I noticed his seatbelt light. It was off above his seat, everyone else's was on. I checked twice. Every row lit except 18A. The turbulence lasted maybe 10 minutes. During it, a flight attendant grabbed the seat backs passing through, and her hand went right through the space above his shoulder, like she misjudged distance. She corrected without reacting. I remember thinking she must have thought the seat was empty for a second. After that, I paid attention. Nobody ever addressed him, not for trash, not for landing prep, nothing. When we landed, everyone stood up right away like always. I waited because aisle seat advantage. He didn't stand. People squeezed past and a guy actually bumped his shoulder, hard enough I heard the jacket fabric shift. But the guy didn't apologize or even glance back like he hadn't felt it. Finally, the row cleared and I stepped into the aisle. I said, "You getting off here?" He turned his head slowly toward me for the first time since boarding. He said, "I already did," then faced forward again. I laughed. Let him pass. The seat was empty, not let him pass. The seat was empty, not stood up. Empty, jacket gone, backpack gone. I figured he rushed ahead while I was grabbing luggage, but the aisle in front of me was still full of people waiting to exit. Nobody from my row had passed me. At the terminal, I forgot about it until baggage claim. I saw him standing at Carousel 6. Same brown jacket, same backpack at his feet. I walked up beside him and said, "You move fast." He looked confused. "Flight's delayed," I said. "We landed already." He frowned slightly like I said something that didn't make sense, then looked past me toward the windows. There was no plane at the gate outside. I turned back to him. He wasn't there anymore. Not walked away, just gone in the time I glanced outside, maybe 1 second. I went home and honestly chalked it up to travel brain. Airports mess with your sense of time. 2 weeks later, I had another trip. Different city, different airline. Seat 22C. When I boarded, seat 22A already had a brown jacket hanging on it, and the guy was standing at the window looking out at the runway. He turned slightly and said, "This one's delayed." I checked my ticket. On time. I didn't sit right away. I stood there long enough to watch him walk past me onto the plane before my boarding group was even called. I didn't take that flight. I left the airport and drove home. Since then, every time I fly, I check the gate windows first. Because twice now, at completely different airports, I've seen him standing there before boarding starts. Always facing the runway. Always at my gate. And last month, before I could turn around and leave, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification I never made. Boarding complete. Timestamp 12 minutes in the future. Then another notification appeared right under it. Seat 22C, final call. That was my seat. I hadn't scanned my boarding pass yet. I was still standing 10 feet away from the line, just staring at the screen. I checked the airline app. My boarding group hadn't even been called. Around me, people were still sitting, eating, normal gate noise. Nobody rushing. I looked back toward the windows. He was still there, same posture, hands at his sides, watching the runway, like something specific was supposed to arrive. I walked away from the gate and into a gift shop just to break line of sight. My hands were shaking more than I wanted to admit. I told myself I'd just wait until boarding actually started and then decide. Inside the store, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You're going to miss it. No area code saved, just digits." I didn't answer. I stepped back out into the terminal. Boarding still hadn't started, but the line at the gate was now halfway full, people scanning in. I checked the time. 3 minutes had passed since I entered the shop. I hadn't heard any announcements. I hurried to the desk and showed my pass to the agent. She scanned it and frowned. "It already boarded," she said. I laughed nervously. "No, I'm right here." She turned her screen slightly toward me. It showed my name with a green check mark. Boarded, 10:42 a.m. My watch said 10:37. "I haven't been on the plane," I said. She looked at me like she thought I was joking, but not very funny. "Sir, you scanned 5 minutes ago." I looked past her down the jet bridge, empty. She asked if I wanted to reprint the ticket because maybe it double scanned. While she printed, I slowly turned toward the windows again. The man wasn't there anymore. I didn't take the flight. I told them I felt sick and rebooked for the next day. I kept thinking maybe someone had my boarding barcode or the app glitched. The next morning, I got to the airport way earlier than necessary. New gate, new time. For almost an hour, everything was normal. Then, about 15 minutes before boarding, I noticed a familiar brown jacket draped over a chair near the window. No one sitting in it. I walked closer before I could talk myself out of it. He was standing at the glass again, hands at his sides. I said, "You keep showing up at my flights." He didn't turn around. He said, "You keep getting on." "I didn't yesterday." "You did," he replied calmly. I felt a chill run up my back because his voice sounded exactly like the first flight. Same tone, same pace. I asked, "Who are you?" He finally looked at me, not threatening, not smiling, just tired. "I'm trying to land," he said. Before I could ask anything else, boarding started behind me. I looked back for a second because the line surged forward. When I looked at the window again, he was gone. I forced myself to get on the plane. Different seat this time, 14C. Scanned my pass slowly, watching the screen. Green check mark. I stepped onto the jet bridge. Halfway down it, my phone buzzed. Airplane mode wasn't even on yet. Calendar notification, landed, time stamped 47 minutes ahead. I stopped walking. People behind me bumped into my backpack, telling me to keep moving. I almost turned around, but something in my head said, if I left again, I'd never stop seeing him at every airport forever. So, I boarded, and seat 14A was empty, but the tray table was already down.